modern historians a bit daft? So, I got a comment recently, and the comment is both correct and incorrect at the same time. I fully believe in what this guy says, but he aims it at me, which I consider to be incorrect. So I'm on holiday at the minute. My girlfriend and the girls have gone swimming, so I've got a couple of hours to myself, so I'm going to answer here. So let me read the comment to you, and when we'll discuss, are modern historians bad? So this is what I got on a video that me and Scott were doing together. So from Sengoku Studies. So you guys are revisionists. You find one instance where it says samurai did not do X other than fight, and then the modern day historian says, oh, they didn't just fight, they also did X. The question is one of percentages. If 99.9% of the time they were warriors, then they're warriors, not linguistics. Or it should be his second language, not linguists. So my question is, why is it so important for modern day historians to nitpick history, so to rewrite the history of other cultures? I mean, the fact that they study Portuguese or Dutch, the samurai, or whatever is a minor thing. I mean, what's the historical implication of making such a minor point, other than modern historians get bored and have to find something new to discover just for the sake of it? I don't get it. Why can you not just accept that samurai were freaking warriors? Yes, it says in the Bansen, Book of Ninja, Bansen Shukai, that ninja learned other languages, etc. But doesn't mean they were just linguists. There's no ninjas, they're just linguists. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So I actually fully agree with this guy, and I'm a bit annoyed. He thinks that's me. So, and I do agree with it, but we do have to address this. So basically, what happens in history is what happens is there are trends in history. So, for example, in the empire days of the late 1800s, historians were like, Vikings are absolutely warriors. They go across the sea and they destroy everyone and kill everyone, and they took over. Anglo-Saxons came to England, destroyed everything. The Indo-Europeans, the Aryans, came down, destroyed everything. But then you get to like another set of generation, a couple of generations later, and it's like, because it's heavy industry, the 1980s, the 70s, 80s and 90s were like about industry and economics, and were going up. Oh, the Vikings were traders and their economics was excellent. Let's focus on the economics of Vikings. So they're no longer warriors going around murder everyone, and they say, oh, well, they probably just traded. And when the Vikings made the Danelaw, they were sort of just trading in and blah, blah, blah. And the Anglo-Saxons actually peacefully came in. And then you get like today, it's like, oh, it was multicultural. The Vikings, everyone was black, everyone was from India, everyone's from, because they find one thing. They found a really powerful female who had darker skin. Doesn't mean she was black, I think she was Middle Eastern or Mediterranean. And it was like, right, that's it. Black females are the most powerful Vikings in the world. And then you get like the black female becomes an earl or a jarl in the series Vikings. And this is how history works. Because what happens is the guy is right. People get bored. We've done the history of this, we've done the history of that, and they pick up one thing and say, well, they're not really warriors. And I agree with this guy full-heartedly. I'm like, there is what there is. So if you go back in time, guys, just on a weekend, if you're bored, get in your time machine, zip back, and go on to some of the shores of Viking times and wait for the Vikings to turn up and just be like, are you here to trade? So there's also another trend in history which really irks me. I mean, and it's everyone's truth is their own truth and it's a reality, and there's this difference between truth and fact. I think it is nonsense. I think it's absolute nonsense. I've argued with Krista from Budo Ryu about this a long time. That's my opinion. And there is just truth and fact. Yes, there are minor differences, but when we talk about them in the broad sense, they pretty much mean the same. So if I teleport myself back in time, back to the end of Wattle Way and Cow Dung Alley, and Joe the Viking is murdering the bishop. He's like, Bishop, get off. There isn't another truth there. There is no alternative. There's nothing. So to make it in a less comedy way, if you go to the shop and you buy a can of Coke and you drink that can of Coke, it's never Lilt. It's never 7-Up. It's never something else. Somebody can come back in time 1,000,000 times and it doesn't change that you bought a can of Coke. It's that simple. So when people say, oh, everybody's interpretation of history is their own thing and truth, no. Something happened and we have to backtrack and find out what happened, because nobody stood there and filmed it or recorded it, or like Bob the Viking got a can of Coke from the shop at the corner and he paid with a £5 note. Doesn't, one groat. he peed with a groat. So, you know, I mean, that just doesn't happen. So historians will then come in and go, the Viking was drinking Coke, so he's got a sugar addiction, sugar trade, cane trade, black people in the cane trade, black people in Viking, and they just do this, and you're like, oh my God, you know what I mean? And so you get the economists going, oh, it's all about economics. You get the people who are multiculturalists going about multiculturalism. You get the imperials or the empire builds going, it's all about empire. And we forget that whatever happened actually happened. As much as history is cool and we like to imagine it and everything, history is just simply some people doing some things. Most of it is very boring. When you do academic history and you do, you know, basically full-on proper history, it's really boring. It is not interesting in the slightest. History is actually only exciting when you focus on the exciting things, or you're a complete nerd. Sometimes I'm a complete nerd and I'm like, oh, imagine this is ace. People looking at me going, just a scroll, Anthony, you know. Yeah, but imagine the building, and it's like somebody in the future going, and Anthony was typing at his computer, and they had in the holiday cottage, and they had these blinds in it. Oh my God, it's amazing. It's like, no, some guy was just writing some stuff down in an old Japanese house, and it was just his house. But we imagine it different to them. So anyway, I'm getting off course. So my point here is, let's get back to samurai. Yes, even though Scott points out a very good point, and it's true, not all samurai were the fighting warrior death machines you think they are. Not all Vikings, that, you know, we're just using these terms. And I hate it when people have to explain the terms. Oh, but Vikings into this. We know what we mean. Northmen coming across the sea, raiding areas, going up and down. We know it happened. It's a fact. It absolutely happened. So, you know, Ragnar Lothbrok, whoever you want to follow from whichever TV show, they're a real person, did a real thing at some point. And yes, they didn't turn up always going with like a cup of tea, a slice of lemon cake. Yes, let's have a chat, some economics. Okay, there were brutal warriors. So what we were trying to do in the last few videos of mine is find out just how much, or just what type of fighting the samurai did. Now, the problem with that is we say samurai, and the problem with that is what fighting. And so you start to say, well, what's the definition of fighting? What's the definition of samurai? And I get this guy's point. It's really annoying when we know what we mean, the warrior of the day, and what is he fighting in which style? But modern historians nitpick and say, well, actually, you know, you could say a samurai is this, and you could say a samurai is that, and they're not incorrect, but they are looking at a thin sliver. There is no dispute whatsoever that when you study the samurai samurai history, they are warriors. Yes, not all of them are warriors. Not all of them are what you imagine as like wind going, you know, sort of head come off, shuriken goes out. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's not like that. But you do really have some really cool lads out there being physically violent, doing violent things, which is what men find quite cool and they enjoy. That's just men. And smashing things around. That's it. So yes, we can't take away from the samurai that they are violent people. Now, and because, let me put it in a different way. Imagine, this includes Ashigaru, imagine a soldier. It's just someone on the streets of South America, yeah? Just a normal someone on the streets of South America in a really gangster-style area. They have an understanding of fighting. Most of them will learn some sort of fighting. Most of them will carry a knife. Some of them have been to prison. Then you get into the gangs. Then you get into the professional, you know, sort of like people who are really high-level gangs, and they're all fighting each other. And then you get the people who just, inside of those gangs, who qualify and just fighting. That's all they want to do is fight and kill, and they go out killing other gang members. And you could do it in America. Not really in England. They don't really do that so much. But you've got all these things that could be happening. They're not at war, but they're hard men. This is same as old-day Tokyo. Old-day Tokyo is not an easy place. Burning executions on the corner of streets, decapitations in decapitation grounds, punishments for people who didn't do any crimes because they're just related to people who did do crimes, punishments for people who just stealing to live, you know, punishments for people who've got revenge on people, punishments for people who just decided they didn't like what the government did, so they said something about it and they wrote a letter and said, there you go. They knew automatic decapitation. This is no joke, guys. If you complained about the government in the past, they would accept your complaint but then decapitate you and then sort it out. There's just so many weird rules in old Japan. That's the life these people live in before you even get to war. So all samurai have to have some nous about them. All Japanese people in the Edo period, in the Sengoku period, have to have some nous about them. And then you add to that, there is a certain percentage of the samurai who are awesome fighters. They're just frontline fighters. And there is some samurai who are not, but by social pressure have to go and fight. So let's look at World War One, conscriptions. You've got to go and fight. You've got some of the bravest lads ever coming out because they were forced to fight. They didn't want to go and fight. They were conscripted. It's like, you know what happened to British soldiers if they didn't fight in World War One? They got shot by their own side. You're a coward. Bang. Off to prison you go. Yeah, but there was shooting. They've been mass pardoned now, haven't they? Because of the executions that happened for cowardice. I don't think they should have done that, to be honest. That was the times. They got shot for cowardice. That was it. You know, that was the way. So you imagine that in samurai times, you know. You put into war, some men do awesome things. Some people, and I've met them, are outright batshit crazy for war and just love murder. Do you know what I mean? They're like, let's go murder everything. You've got them lads. So I agree with you. I forgot the name of the guy, but I agree with you. We shouldn't forget that. The samurai are a fighting culture. They're an elite warrior caste. They have a reputation from outside of their own themselves. Basically, we have European accounts of people saying these are awesome fighters, or they will fight to the death. We have those accounts. We know there's too much of them for people to disagree that they are hard fighters. So yes, I agree with that statement, but please don't put it onto me. I am just putting into the mix that yes, we have to understand these things, because otherwise, if you don't put in these little things in the mix, then you find that this image of the samurai in the wind and he draws his katana and they're perfect warriors. Then people exist, but not all of them. And we do have the linguists, we do have the economics people, we do have the people who are crossing rivers, we do have the cowards, we do have the elite and overweight because they've just literally been brought up because they're such and such a body's grandson and they carry heraldry and banners that they don't deserve. We still have corruption like that inside of warrior systems because no warrior system starts from new. It isn't new. You always go back to your ancestors, who they go back to their ancestors, and you go back to their ancestors. So in mine and Scott's defence, we're just pointing out the extra bits that you got to remember. But for you, the commentator, you're absolutely correct. We shouldn't do it too much because they are fighting men. That's their main focus. And yes, you can focus in on certain clans and say, well, they didn't fight so much. But no, when we look at Japan as a whole, samurai were the fighting people. That was their job. So I get you. Right. If you're interested, if you kept this along to the video, get yourself a copy of Book of Bushido. There'll be an advert for it at the end. And help me out, keep me going, keep me on holidays so I can